Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Lorehammer. I am your host for tonight, Leman Fuzz, once again replacing Mark.
I love it.
And it is my pleasure to introduce some of the OG cast. My co-host tonight is the Canis King Christian.
Everybody, I finally got my suit from the laundromat, so I'm good to cosplay furries with you guys tonight.
Excellent. And you can, if you're watching the live stream, you can see the instruments in the background for who's going to be our scold for tonight, Jordan.
Hey guys, and also for those who are just listening, Fuzz and Christian are both dressed for the occasion. They have adorned themselves with furs, straight from the Canadian North, or excuse me, the 51st state.
Anyway, so just to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. There is going to be a trivia night live stream. This is going to be on April 1st. Patreon members will be able to play along. And if you're not on the Discord, I definitely recommend getting on the Discord. You'll get more details on that, as well as just it's a great place to hang out, talk, lore, Warhammer, like tabletop strategy, all sorts of different kind of channels for discussions. And should be a link to that in the description for the episode.
And if you guys would join the Imperial Tithe and help support the show, help sponsor our furry costumes and get-ups, and get an ad-free version of the show for only $2.50 a month. That is basically free. And you can come see our costumes on video for $5 a month. And you get the video version of the show. Just help us sponsor those costumes so we can keep this going. I love playing dress up personally, but...
Absolutely. And as well, a benefit for the Patreon members, you can also get access to the live stream chat room during the show, so you can jump in and actually participate in the recording. As you'll hear, we address people's questions and comments throughout the episode, and we also do calling guests at the end of the episode. And again, that's all available to the Patreon members. And as always, you can join me for whiskey and Warhammer. Today we're going beer again, a little more classy, Stella Artois, so which is really just Anheuser-Busch, but with a different name.
You should have done like a Viking mead or something, Jordan. I'm disappointed.
This was the closest thing I could get to mead. So.
I've at least got a dark beer for myself.
Yeah, fair.
All right, so tonight we're going to be doing Space Wolves 30K Legion era. We're going to be, touching on things like their exploits in the Horus Heresy, and of course going into their like chapter structures, Legion structures, their traditions, their different their specific units, things like that. So if you want to go and kick us off, Christian.
Gladly. So let's just do a quick recap. Whatever that word. Recap, thank you, of their history. The Vilka Fenraka, known to all as the Space Wolves, are forged from the cold, merciless world of Fenris, and their name is spoken with awe and fear across the galaxy. Once the 6th Legion of Astartes, the sons of Leman Russ are as untamed and fierce as the winds that howl across their home world. These warriors of legend are not bound by the laws of men, nor by the dictates of any codex, but their own. Their story began with the Emperor's will, but it is a tale written in blood, fire, and bone, an unyielding testament to their savage honor and loyalty. From the beginning of the Great Crusade, the Space Wolves have known but one truth. To fight is to live, and to die in battle is the greatest honor a warrior can achieve. Theirs is a life of glory won through the clash of steel, and their sagas are recounted from one end of the Imperium to the other, their deeds immortalized in the hearts of their kin. Fierce and unrelenting, they excel in close combat, reveling in the chaos of battle. Death is but a shadow at their backs, and they charge toward it without hesitation. For what is death to a warrior born of Fenris? The tale of the Space Wolves are written not in the records of battle scribes, but in the blood spilled on distant worlds. Their honors are not worn by cold calculation or methodical strategy, but by the courage and brute strength of the very essence of their wild and untamed nature. To be a Space Wolf is to seek glory at all costs, to carve your name into the stars with every clash of weapons, every victory on the field, Amongst their kin, their sagas live on, each battle a verse in the eternal song of their existence. To some, particularly the stoic Dark Angels, the Space Wolves are seen as brash and reckless, glory hounds whose desire for fame borders on arrogance. But the truth is far more ancient. Every Space Wolf seeks his name to echo through the ages, to stand alongside Leman Russ himself in the tales told by their kin long after they have fallen in battle. Their desire is not for fleeting renown, but for legacy that will endure the eons, a story told again and again through the voice of their brothers. In appearance, they are wild and feral, draped in the skins, bones, and teeth of the beasts they hunt and conquer in single combat. Their armor is adorned not with pomp of the other legions, but with trophies of their victories, each piece a symbol of their unyielding ferocity. Their manners, too, are unrefined. They are a brotherhood forged in the fires of war, headstrong and competitive, yet bound by an unbreakable loyalty to their pack. It is their unity that their strength lies, and through it they write their saga, one battle at a time. The initiation rites of the Space Wolves are amongst the harshest in the Imperium, a brutal test of strength, spirit, and survival. To become a true brother of the Vielka Fernraka, a neophyte must prove his worth in the fires of combat, often facing death itself in a trial that leaves no room for weakness. The spark of life must endure through the storm of battle, for only then can the neophyte claim his place amongst the Space Wolves. His saga, now entwined with that of his brothers, forever part of the mythic legacy of the Wolves of Fenris.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I said it a lot in the last episode as well. I do like the Space Wolves. You know, kind of similarly to the White Scars, they're kind of this very proud people who live on a harsh world, and yeah, it's just cool.
Yeah, to me, I like the nature of like the storytelling and the sagas, and like that drive for them to have their names echo through history.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate with that.
Yeah, the way they stick to their traditions, just kind of regardless of anything else, is really nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the origins. By the Second Terran decade of the Great Crusade, the Fourth Legion's name had already woven itself into the tapestry of the Imperium's legend, though not without controversy. Their victories were undeniable, their battle honors countless, but the stories of needless destruction and slaughter among the human civilians spread like wildfire. Whispers of these events were harsh, though the truth was veiled in shadows. Even before the icy winds of Fenris had begun to shape the Legion in the image of their Primarch, there was an untamed wildness to them, a ferocity that foreshadowed the terrible mark of the Canis Helix. Yet, at the time, that savagery had yet to truly take root, lingering as a seed, only faintly visible in their actions. Rumors of discord within their ranks were equally rife. The Sixth Legion was said to be led not by the cold hand of command, but by the raw strength of its leaders, an unbroken will that bent the Legion's course to their individual desires. Unity, it was claimed, had yet to be fully forged among them, and the infighting was common, in an age when the Emperor's sons had yet to fully impose their will upon their legions, and Horus had not yet cemented his place among them. The Sixth stood as an embodiment of untamed nature. They were spoken of in the same breath as the Night Lords, their ferocity likened to the horrors of the Eighth Legion, who were already renowned for wielding terror like a weapon. Some whispered that the Sixth must be closely watched, lest their unchecked fury spill over into something uncontrollable. But the sharpest sting of all was the accusation that the Sixth Legion was only at its fiercest when the enemy was already broken, when they could slay the helpless. The name Rout became their cruel epithet, a title shared by the scavenger beasts of Terra's dead seas, jackals and pariah hounds, who preyed on the weak and defenseless, only showing courage when their victims were already near death. This insult, though harsh, was perhaps meant to cast the six in contrast to the 12th Legion, the Warhounds, who were already whispered about as paragons of honorable ferocity. The Warhounds, it was said, had learned to control their rage, unleashing it only upon the most worthy of foes, a weapon to overcome impossible odds. The comparison now seems almost laughable, for the very fate of these two legions would be shaped by the arrival of their primarchs, two paths destined to diverge in ways that none could have foreseen. And though their change was slow in coming, it would prove a transformative one for the six, reshaping their destiny as the Emperor's warhounds and ensuring they would one day howl as wolves beneath the cold, pale light of Fenris. Oh.
Please end every chapter.
I'm not actually very familiar with the Warhounds. Are they sort of like an antagonist to the Space Wolves?
No, that was the Legion name of the World Eaters before they became World Eaters.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. I am familiar with the World Eaters, so scratch that then.
Yeah, it's a cool contrast between them. There's a couple of legions, and again, now I'm hesitant to say all, but there's a couple of loyalist legions for sure who seem to have, had they not encountered their Primarch or had things gone a little differently, they could have been the equivalent of the Chaos Legion. Space Wolves being one of them. Like, again, very World Eater like before Leman Russ came. Very savage and brutal and just butchery. And then other ones come to mind similarly, like the Blood Angels. Just like these big critical flaws that are kind of corrected once their Primarch joins them.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar, like with it talks about them, the rumor being that they are led by sort of the strongest will around, and being a little chaotic in that way. And I could definitely see that with like the Canis Helix built into their genes until their Primarch shows up and just kind of snaps them all into order as the leader of the pack, So but yeah, definitely agree. Like them, the White Scars also as sort of these legions that were a little bit more like wild and independent in their own ways. Without their Primarch, could have fallen to chaos a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mark in the chat says going around sniffing each other's butts, trying to assert dominance.
Mark, what we do after the show has nothing to do with anything. Okay.
Oh, jeez.
All right. Do you want me to try resetting for my audio since you're saying I'm sounding a little off, or go ahead and read this part?
Yeah, you could try. Maybe Christian, if you want to read this.
All right. Let's get into Russ and the Wolves. Records which remain about the transition of command in the 6th Legion indicate that things went generally smoothly, at least at first. That their Primarch had been the second recovered was a matter both of rejoicing and some pride within the ranks of the Legion, and that their new lord was of a barbaric mien, who's perhaps of less constant consternation to them given many of the individual Astartes' origins than it otherwise might have been. Russ also was charismatic and readily inspired awe among those he had been given command, and in a legion which already respected strength over perhaps anything else, here was a warrior whose strength exceeded any of them by a degree as to seem almost absurd in comparison. Rathbin relinquished command to his Primarch, perhaps begrudgingly, but without open challenge, and if the presence of the Varagir, who Leman Russ had ordered dispersed partly through the ranks, was cause for some resentment, it was quickly made known that both Russ's rule was not to be questioned, and that the Varagir were more than willing to offer themselves in single combat to decide any argument over the matter. And just as a quick reminder to everyone, the Varagir were like the honor guard. Before any acrimony could fester, Leman Russ, in his wisdom, determined to take his legion into battle, so that he, his kinsmen, and his gene sons would spill blood and face death together, and so be forged anew as one. So yeah, this is just the story of how they encountered their Primarch, and kind of it seems that transitions went smoothly. Leman Russ takes over. There isn't any kind of like open conflict. Maybe there's some resentment there. Maybe there's a little bit of, when like you're in a system based on strength, when somebody stronger comes in and kind of like dominates and takes over, there's obviously like questions of pride and things. But nothing crazy happens with Leman Russ taking over. No one tries to kill him or fight him or challenge him directly. So pretty smooth by all accounts.
Yeah, I am just sort of curious, are the Vergir like in any way related to like the Vanir in Norse mythology that you're aware of, Christian? Is there any kind of relation to that?
Not that I'm aware of. There certainly might be a connection, but we
Yeah.
did mention
Similar alliteration, I guess, or
maybe, yeah.
pronunciation.
We did mention a couple of episodes back how they sounded similar to me anyways, a Bogatyr, which were kind of like a knightly class, a mercenary knightly class in medieval Russia, or the
Varangian Guard,
yeah, from Byzantium, who were literally bodyguards of the Emperor of Byzantium. So, I mean, them being bodyguards too kind of makes sense with that. But, yeah.
Right. I can read these next two sections and we can get back on track here. Okay, the Great Crusade. The Space Wolves, under the banner of their mighty Primarch Leman Russ, fought with unrivaled ferocity during the Great Crusade, the Emperor's sacred campaign to unite the galaxy under the banner of the Imperium. Fearless and relentless, the Space Wolves shattered the enemies of mankind in countless battles, their warriors embodying the savage fury of their homeworld, Fenris. Their loyalty to the Emperor was unwavering, yet their ways were wild and untamed, often in stark contrast to the more disciplined legions. Their prowess in close-quarter combat became legendary, and their savagery in battle was tempered only by the honor and brotherhood they held for one another. Their campaigns were marked by glory and bloodshed, and their sages spread across the stars as tales of mighty heroes and victories that would never be forgotten. All right, now the Horus Heresy. When the galaxy was rent asunder by Horus's treachery, the Space Wolves stood unyielding, loyal to the Emperor above all else. The traitorous legions sought to destroy the Imperium, but the Space Wolves were a bulwark of defiance. Their ferocity was unmatched, charging into the fray with savage determination. In the battles that raged across the galaxy, they fought against the traitor legions without hesitation, refusing to yield an inch to the forces of darkness. Their warriors clashed with the likes of the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Thousand Suns, battling with the strength of wolves unleashed upon their enemies. During the Siege of Terra, the Space Wolves fought fiercely, their hatred for the traitors burning bright as they stood among the Emperor's loyalists, defending the throne world from its would-be conquerors. The very soul of the Space Wolves was tested, and they emerged from the heresy as some of the Emperor's most loyal, their rage and determination, an enduring testament to their unbreakable bond with him. It is interesting. I wonder if they kind of broke their previous reputation of sort of only going in for the kill when the enemy is weak. Whereas during the Horus Heresy, they seem to be ready to confront the traitor legions head on. They're like very aggressive about it.
Yeah, for sure. And especially like when you see them used in parts of the Great Crusade even as well, they're described as like a vanguard, like the initial force that the Emperor would send in. So I haven't read really any of the books. I don't know like where that part of the lore comes from of them only kind of taking out the weaker foes. But they for sure have a lot in there about earning the reputation for, striking early, striking first.
Yeah.
Knowing the purpose to strike Jack, absolutely.
Yeah, Jack in the comments just asked if the Space Wolves, do they know the perfect time to strike? I'll throw that to you guys.
Well, the answer is yes, obviously.
Yeah, it seems like very wolf-like to know exactly when when to strike.
And I like that description of being like loyal but wild at the same time. Those sorts of kind of contrasting elements of that unwavering, unbreakable loyalty to the Emperor, but they kind of do it in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said in our previous episode too, is they're a legion of all about contrasts and comparisons.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted for a second. All right, so following the catastrophic events of the Horus Heresy, the galaxy was plunged into chaos, and the traitors who had once served the Emperor fled to the farthest corners of the galaxy. The Space Wolves, ever relentless, took up the mantle of vengeance during the Great Scouring. Their purpose was clear: to hunt down and purge the traitors who had dared to betray the Emperor. The Space Wolves pursued the remnants of the traitor legions with a single-minded ferocity, hunting them across the galaxy, their howls echoing in the void as they tore through enemy forces. As they tracked down the scattered traitor fleets, they unleashed their wrath upon the followers of Horus, driving them into the darkest corners of the galaxy, leaving no stone unturned. Their loyalty to the Emperor remained unwavering, their mission not one of mercy, but of justice. The Great Scouring was a testament to their enduring loyalty and the unrelenting nature of their vengeance, ensuring that the traitors would never again rise to threaten the Imperium.
Awesome. So that's
So-
kind of the recap of them during the heresy. Let's get into their appearance. We'll go on a little bit about kind of what they look like, what their badges look like, and squad markings and all that stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have examples. Otherwise, I would be wearing my full Space Wolf attire. All right. Before the fires of the Horus Heresy were kindled, the Space Wolves clad themselves in battle plate of storm-forged gray, echoing the grim steel of the Grey Legions who carved the Emperor's dominion from the blood and ashes of Old Terra. Their war gear bore not just the scars of war, but the spirit of Fenris itself, marked by the runes of their ancestors, the relics of their hearth, and the craftsmanship of their own hands. Every engraving, every inscribed glyph spoke of sagas written in blood and victories wrested from the maw of death. To don the armor of the rout was to wear the weight of one's deeds upon one's shoulders. The eldest suits, those that had weathered the uncounted storms of battle, bore the adornments of long service, trophies won in fire and claw, runes of warding and might wove across their ceramite plates, not merely for ornamentation, but as a testament of a warrior's prowess, a mark of his place among the pack. Wolf pelts draped over shoulders and bound to gauntlets were not mere trophies, but declarations of dominance. A Phoenician right that separated the strong from the weak. Just as the salamanders bore the scales of the worms they had slain, so too did the wolves display the hides of the beasts that they had bested, for only those who conquered the wild could claim its strength as their own. In this, the way of the rout, the way of the warriors who carved their sagas in the bones of their foes and wore the legacy of their triumphs as surely as their warplate. Yeah, so first and foremost, the colors of the Space Wolves are gray. Something to do probably with gray wolves. In theming, because everything has to relate back to wolves. Very one-dimensional. But yeah, you'll see them, they're not very uniform, first of all. They have very unique characteristics. Usually, yeah, you'll see kind of like runes that are scratched into their weapons and armor. They usually have a lot of, obviously, wolf symbolism. You'll see kind of wolf skulls. You'll see teeth. You'll see lots of pelts, kind of just capturing the aesthetic of the Space Wolves. One thing that I always found odd about that is the description of the wolves, the Space Wolves' relationship with the Phoenician wolves is always kind of described as familial. Like they'll often have wolves that fight alongside them, or they'll ride as wolf mounts and things. So I kind of find it, but I believe it's part of their inception that they're supposed to also kill a Phoenician wolf as part of the acceptance into the chapter as well. And I assume that wearing these pelts and things are symbols of that. But yeah, I was just kind of found it odd that like on the one hand, the wolf symbolism is used as, like you don't wear your family's skins around you. At least I hope not.
I hope not.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of this weird, again, this dichotomy that Space Wolves always exists in, where on the one hand, wolves are seen as like fearsome and something that you should fight against, I guess, or like wear their trophies as badges of honor. But on the other side of it, like they run with these wolf packs. These wolf packs act like their companions, and even I'd go as far as saying family. So I always found that a little strange personally, but
Yeah, I wonder if there's more than one kind of wolf on Fenris. Like it's listed as the Thunder Wolves are the ones that like took in Leman Russ when he was younger.
yeah,
And
there
maybe
are different kinds of wolf breeds.
Okay.
And yeah, maybe that's it. Like some are more, I guess, untamed than others. But still, I think like the general term for them is Phrygian wolves. So you'll hear like a Phrygian wolf pelt, but also a Phrygian wolf companion too. So,
okay, as opposed to like this is a Thunder Wolf pelt or an Ice Wolf pelt or whatever the other kind of wolves are.
The only one that I think specifically is also named in the sense of like a pelt that they would use is, I believe, Lucas the Trickster wears like a chameleon wolf. I forget what their actual name is, but it's a wolf that can like blend in or change colors or go invisible. And I think he wears that. And yeah, so again, it's kind of odd to me. It's not well laid out.
Yeah.
Jack in the comments says there are no wolves on Fenris, fellas. You're not wrong, but also I hate that saying too.
Right.
I'll have my gripes at the end of the episode, but
yeah.
Since we're talking
I did want to make one note on the appearance, and I think this might be the older version of the Space Wolves, but they are like a light blue.
It's a blue gray.
Yeah.
It's often described as a blue gray.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think who's telling me? One of the guys I was recording with last was telling me that it used to be like the blue back in the day was like a lot more pronounced, but in more recent iterations, they've gone more to that gray hue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Heresy wolves were like a lot more like less blue and much more gray.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that kind of the lore reason for them being gray, like as an homage to the Astartes that fought during the Unification Wars, that before they were in the Legion Cells had that gray armor.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly like the gray look, to be honest. I don't want to use the word bland, but I like standardization, I guess I should say, which is why Space Wolves aren't on the top of my list. Yeah. We should also note that they do wear some accent colors, like they usually have reds and yellows, on shoulder pads and things. And then they'll have we'll get into all the details about their different company markings and stuff that they wear on their arms and shoulders and legs and stuff. But yeah, just again trying to give like an overall vibe for what they look like.
Yeah. All right, sorry, I'm just laughing at the chat right now. Lots of talk about foreskins. So that's why
you have to talk about all skins.
If you join the Patreon, you can come into the chat and learn exactly what they're talking about.
At your own risk. Lorehammer Legal needs you to take a waiver.
Yeah. All right, chapter badge and company badge. The mark of the route is the snarling red wolf, a beast of hunger and fury, a sigil of those who hunt among the stars. Yet within this legion, no single mark binds its warriors, for the warriors of Fenris do not walk the path of rigid order. Unlike the lesser sons of Guilliman, the Space Wolves do not kneel to the Codex Astartes, nor do they divide themselves by rank and regulation. Instead, each great company bears its own totem, a sigil chosen by its wolf lord upon his ascension, a beast from the sagas, a spirit of war and winter, a symbol of the strength he brings to his kin. This badge is carved into armor, etched upon banners, and burned into the hearts of those who follow him, a bond stronger than steel. But when a wolf lord falls, as all warriors must, the pack shifts and a new mark is raised. A new hunter steps forward to guide the route. That's actually that's pretty sweet. I also like that there is a bit of individuality. Again, that's kind of what I like about the white scars. They're like kind of their own thing, and it's hard to tame them entirely. And also just like incorporating their own kind of mythology into their companies and chapters is just a very nice touch.
Yeah, like they are not, they don't follow the codex strictly, but they sort of do in their own way, like using their own traditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing too, I guess, while we're just on the topic of appearance, we didn't mention kind of like the aesthetics that they wear themselves on their person. Oftentimes, Space Wolves have more of a Viking-esque look to their like hair, their facial hair, big beards, long hair, lots of braids and little things in the beards. I don't know what you call those. Fuzz, you had them in your beard the other day.
Like braids and stuff.
Just beard beads.
Ringlets.
Yeah. Different. There are different kinds of things you can weave in there too, whether it's like gems or rings or beads or runes
or bones or
bones. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, just adding to that
Dreadlocks.
description. Yeah, there's so much dreadlocks, and braids, and just like generally unkempt and unruly. Oftentimes a little bit wild, I guess I would describe their hair, including like some questionable styles as well, like one side with the hair all like spiked up and the other side flat, and
like a half mohawk kind of a thing. Or
they're definitely a look for sure.
But they sound a lot different than they look. They sound like this, like a Swedish man eating his Swedish meatballs.
Yeah, are we going to go hunt the great wolves?
Oh yes. Okay. We'll continue on here. Yet there is one banner that does not change: the household of the Great Wolf, the warband of Fenris. Fenris's mightiest chieftain bears the mark of Leman Russ himself, the wolf that stalks between stars. No wolf lord dares claim a new sigil for his company, for none can stand in the shadow of the Allfather. This badge is more than heraldry. It is legend, an echo of Russ that lingers still. It marks not only warriors, but relics of ancient glory, blades and banners that have known the touch of the Primarch's own hands. Jack in the comments says that the Norse people were actually much cleaner than most at that time. Actually,
And they were. That is a factual statement.
I'll take your guys' word for it. I don't know, but
they bathed regularly and things.
Comb their hair, stuff like that. Basic hygiene.
But we're talking about filthy Phoenicians, which we know don't bathe, so they often smell like wet dog. I hear.
But I think the stereotype is like a Viking doesn't bathe.
Oh yeah, just covered in dirt and blood and grime and everything.
Yeah. So thank you for correcting that, Jack, and defending the honor of the Norse people and all Norse-coded people as well.
You will be receiving an award from Norway and Sweden soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So pack markings for the Space Wolves. The Space Wolves bear their pack markings with pride. The sigils of their kin emblazoned upon their right shoulder, a bond as unbreakable as the ice of Fenris itself. Some etch these same glyphs upon a knee guard, a second marking of allegiance to the brotherhood that fights and feasts as one. Their war beasts of iron, rhinos, land raiders, and the like are no different, clad in the same honored script, bound to their warriors as a shield brother in the line of battle. A transport carries the sigil of those it bears into the fray, while the great engines of war, battle tanks and their kind, wear the markings of the warriors who guide them, each rune a whispered saga in the language of war. Those who have earned glory beyond reckoning bear their own sigils upon a field of storm gray, a mark not of vanity, but of deeds worthy of tale and song. So I wonder if this is like sort of like the great companies are sort of like their chapters, and then these packs would be more like what you think of like a battle company.
I think it's even smaller. I think packs are even as like more squad like. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong. I actually don't know a lot about Space Wolves, but they're definitely very unique in those different markings. Like they have different color combos, like I said, reds and yellows and grays. Mm-hmm. And then they will often have like different striped or jagged triangular patterns, or like wolf skull symbols or paw marks, or they're just very. The point is they look very again, not uniform. Obviously, they're using shared markings to distinguish their packs, but each pack obviously has like a bit of a different vibe. So
yeah, and it said if you do something great enough, you even get to get your own personal marking as well, which I imagine that could then be used. Like, say you do ascend to like the leader of a great company, you could use that marking for for that banner or something.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, and also like I said earlier on with like the runes and things, like they'll carve that into the armor themselves or their weapons. Like it's with the Space Wolves, it's just a free for all.
Yeah, they like their aesthetics as much as I'm sure they would not enjoy being called, those who worry about their appearance a lot. They seem to worry about their appearance a lot in their, all of their carvings and markings, and everything has to be just right.
All right. And on the topic of markings, let's talk about honor markings. The Space Wolves do not seek medals or gilded honors, for their true glory is carved into their warplate and weapons. Each scar, rune, and mark a testament to their sagas they have written in blood. Acts of courage, ferocity, and sacrifice are not forgotten. They are painted, etched, and branded into their armor, a language of valor that needs no words. The machines of war that bear them into battle are given the same reverence. A rhino that has weathered a storm of fire to deliver its pack into the fray, or a predator that has stood unyielding against the tide, may be marked with a badge of honor. Phoenician runes recounting its deeds, or sigils entwining the fates of the crew and steel alike. Though there is no rigid system for these markings, all who fight alongside a warrior know the truth of their deeds. For the meaning of a bone sigil or a knife rune is as old as Fenris itself. The broken fang denotes wounds suffered without surrender. The claw speaks of savage wrath in battle, and the wolf's tail sings of unyielding courage in the face of death. These are not mere decorations. They are the echoes of a warrior saga, carried into the battle until the day he falls. So again, back with the sagas as well, of like telling their personal story or their heroic journey or whatever challenges they faced. All that is kind of told through the markings that they wear, which is really cool. Again, it speaks to that individualization of like their individual pride, their individual honor. And then again, that rolls into the same aesthetic of the uniqueness of each warrior, right? Like some guy might wear a pelt around his waist, some might have a pelt on his back, some has an honor marking on his shoulder or on his chest, or somewhere on his helmet. So
yeah, and it's neat that you can look at sort of the individual body parts that they're wearing, and if you understand the lore behind it, other traditions, you know what they mean. Like I said, if someone's maybe wearing a broken fang, they were gravely wounded but didn't give up the battle, stuff like that.
yeah, there's meaning etched in all these things. It's not just a random assortment of like items and sigils. Like it does have meaning.
Yeah, it's not just trophies.
Yeah. So I guess in that regard, that kind of answers my question, I guess, about wearing those pelts and things. Like it is seen as an honor or part of telling your story, that you have a wolf tooth necklace or you have like a pelt on your back. Whatever meanings that is to the Phoenicians that we don't know, but it means something more, like you said, more than just a trophy.
Yeah, again, like you've talked about that kind of contradictions of with a lot of Astartes, but especially with the Space Wolves, of wearing with honor, like be with pride, this thing that you killed, but that you love, but that like you respect its strength, so you kill it, but it's part of your traditions and your family, and
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I was muted. On that note, we'll get into the beliefs of the Space Wolves. They are raised on sagas of world-striding wolves, monstrous fiends, and warriors of unyielding might. They scorn sorcery and distrust the lifeless hum of machines, placing faith instead in steel, instinct, and the ancient ways of Fenris. To them, Leman Russ and the Allfather stand as the greatest of heroes, figures of legend who embody honor and unbreakable will. Many beyond Fenris sneer at their traditions, calling them primitive. But the sons of Russ do not kneel. They have drawn blades against those who would seek to break their ways, even against the ecclesiarchy itself. A space wolf's spirit is but a thread in the great weave of fate, cut when death takes him. In ages past, their fallen were committed to the flames, their names carried in howls of pyres. The most honored dead are sent off with feasts of remembrance, where the skald gathers the deeds of the fallen and sings them in the great halls. These sagas must be told in full, no matter the time it takes. Such was the way of Hieroth, Longfang's passing, when 432 tales were spoken over long days of fire and feast. In this age, the dead rest atop Mount Krakgard, or in the sacred tombs, such as that of Herrick Ironhelm, beneath the shadow of the Fang. No judgment is passed in the cold void. The old ways demand that trials be held upon the earth, where warriors stand firm and justice is bound to soil. Should a reckoning be called, the space wolves will set down upon the nearest world to see it done. For the law of Fenris is not spoken in the emptiness of space. It is carved into stone of battle and blood. Yeah, so again, a lot of sort of Norse coded beliefs there. It is also interesting. One thing I do know about the Norse is that they didn't have any writing by the time the Vikings were invading the United Kingdom, or I guess not then the United Kingdom, but the Isles of England,
the British Isles.
Yeah. By the time they were invading, they actually didn't have any like writing, and so a lot of what we know about like their religion back then was just based on oral tradition and what they conveyed to the Brits, by the time they had started communicating more. So it is kind of interesting, and you wonder like how much transformation had gone through the society. We just don't really know because they didn't really keep any written records. But it is interesting that they're even the space wolves themselves have like a very strong oral tradition, much like the Norse as well. So it is kind of again another interesting sort of borrowing of that.
I've been told I have a pretty strong oral tradition myself.
I would high five you next. If I ever meet you in person, you'll get a wonderful high five for that. But yeah, I remember we talked, I think before, Christian, about like the Norse oral traditions and the sagas, and even going into like great traditions, and pretty much like every ancient culture had these like long-standing oral traditions, whether they had writing or not. And especially like with these, just how using them in that like honor sense when somebody passes, telling every story, every deed of somebody, before the feasting, before the remembrance is over, is very cool.
Yeah. Another, again, while we're on the topic, the I guess Norse coded thing too is the Norse were also known for their laws. Again, they were, a lot of people think of Vikings as like savage and barbaric, but they did have like a decent legal system, and I guess that's kind of spoken to as well through the Space Wolves, in that they have like when they have issues, they will actually land on a planet and deal with the issue, because again, that's like part of their tradition, is they have to be on soil. They don't do judgments in space. And in the chat, Mark also referenced that another duality with the Space Wolves, who don't do battle in space. Yes. But yeah, again, just obviously feeding into that very strong Viking theme. But.
All right, so moving on, I feel like with the section we just read, there are some really interesting names with like Longfang and Ironhelm, and we're getting into the deed names. So among the Space Wolves, a warrior's name is not given, it is earned. Deed names are carved from battle and legend, marking feats of courage, cunning, or wrath. Some reflect a warrior's nature, like Beric Thunderfist and his iron grasp, or Canis Wolfborn, raised among the beasts of Fenris. Others tell of deeds that echo through the ages. Njal Stormcaller, who drove chaos from the field with a tempest of his own making, or Ragnar Blackmane, who slew the dread wolf of his trials. Some names need no telling, like Bran Redmaw, whose curse speaks for itself. A warrior may bear many names as sagas unfold, each stacking upon the last like the scars of war. Some will change with time, fading into memory, while others remain until death, spoken with reverence by kin and feared by foes. So yeah, like kind of like every, ornament, all the runes, every carving, all these little physical decorative details of the space wolves have some meaning to them. Even their names come with meaning based on the deeds that they've done. Like the previous section there was where was it? It was something Longfang, I think. Yeah, Aeroth Longfang. So maybe he was known for, using, particularly long swords or something, or maybe he just had big teeth. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, Longfang, from my very little understanding of Phoenician culture, they have a unit of Longfangs. I guess their teeth keep growing as they age.
Okay.
So Longfang is related to being old or having having had a long life. So
yeah, I think that's really interesting. If you're reading the books or any like named miniatures that come out for the hobby, looking at them and trying to come up with, what's the story behind that name. Did Ironhelm, did he take a blow from a demon straight to the dome, but was able to shrug it off and so earned his name or something?
Yeah, like you said, like their names tell a story too. I'm just laughing here. The chat's going off on a whole bunch of Skyrim memes.
Yeah, I saw Fenris is for the Nords.
Yeah, Fenris belongs to the Nords. Fenris belongs to Russ. My ancestors are smiling at me, Phoenician. Can you say the same? Did you see those warriors from Komarach? They have curved swords. Curved swords. Yeah, anyone familiar with Skyrim would know any of those quotes. But...
Right. I used to be a space wolf, and then I took a wolf egg to the knee.
Are there any space wolves named Dragonborn at all?
Not yet, but you could.
Maybe there's a salamander.
Yeah, a salamander space wolf.
Right.
Another thing I kind of wanted to mention too is that space wolves seem to have they exist like a lot more entwined with the culture, and they act less strictly as soldiers. I'm just trying to think of how to explain that a little better. Certain groups like Imperial Fists or Ultramarines, like there's a little bit of a separation of them from their home worlds. Ultramarines is maybe a bad example, but Imperial Fists, let's say, there's like a separation of themselves from their home worlds, and their whole purpose, everything that they are, revolves around the chapter, discipline, doing their job to the for the Imperium. Whereas Space Wolves, like, they do things for fun. They have like cultural history that's outside of warfare, like telling personal stories in sagas. Like like what I'm going to get into here, where they go on like hunting trips. They do things that, yes, it's part of like a warrior tradition, but also goes beyond just combat and just the Imperium. Like they're almost living for themselves, and they're having a good time doing it, versus like just being disciplined and regimented as soldiers. If that kind of makes sense. Which is pretty unique to the Space Wolves.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. You don't think about the Space Wolves as like living in barracks, and they don't have that regimented order that you would typically associate with like that soldier culture, as opposed to this warrior culture. If that difference makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Now I will say there are some other legions and chapters that do, like I said, Ultramarines is maybe a bad example, that do have some kind of, I guess, civilian life, or interaction. Salamanders and Ultramarines come to mind immediately.
Yeah, but White Scars, we talked about that a little bit too.
Yeah, but for sure, Space Wolves are up there for like I said, like they're living a full life in everything that they do. They feast, they have fun. You know, they're hanging out with their bros as much as they are in a squad in a barracks, right?
I mean, it makes them a little more complex too, even as characters. Like if
Yeah.
they can actually interact with the outside world.
Yeah, exactly. Not everything is just, you know, war and death for war and death's sake.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. And on that note, let's talk about beast hunts. In the cruelest winters, a wolf lord may lead his pack into the wilds on a beast hunt. Armed only with their strength and cunning, they must bring down the great beasts of Fenris, for none may return to the Fang without proof of their kill. The first to return claims his place at the head of the feast, while the last, called the tail, must serve his kin red meat and blooded ale, barred from the revelry. Shame rarely sits well amongst the sons of Russ, and before long, fists and fangs will settle the matter. Again, like they're partying, they're having a good time. Yes, you know, going out and testing your strength and metal, hunting beasts with your bare hands. And we talked about there are more than I like this phrase better. There are more than wolves on Fenris. We talked about like mammoths and other creatures, aurochs that live on Fenris, krakens. There's all kinds of fearsome beasts. So they go out on these hunting trips. Again, yes, you learn to fight, you learn like skills and everything, but you're also having a good time. It's also fun. You have a feast after. You get drunk and get into fights with your, you know, brothers, and yeah, it's just like a good time overall, like a hunting trip with the boys.
Right.
Just on a note on the last point, Mark says in the chat, that's an interesting distinction between soldier and warrior cultures. So example he gives is Ultramarines versus White Scars, which yeah is true. It is, you can make that distinction.
A quote that I love and shilling for Star Wars right now. Knights of the Old Republic, there's a quote by Karth Onasi who talks about the distinction between soldiers and warriors. It's a pretty good quote. If people want to YouTube it, just type in Knights of the Old Republic, soldiers versus warriors. The Mandalorians have a very like inbuilt warrior culture where like war is part of their history and values in society. And Karth is a soldier of the Republic. He sees soldiering as an occupation, and it doesn't have this, like, it's more of a burden or something that we have to do.
Like being a soldier is kind of like, it's more like a vocation or profession, whereas like being a warrior is like your identity. It's who you are born to be, and that's ingrained in you from a very young age, right? Like I think it's just a very different mentality to that soldier versus warrior distinction.
Yeah, and how you see combat and how you see fighting and all of it.
Yeah.
Another cool juxtaposition too is Troy, the movie with Brad Pitt, where they often discuss that distinction between a warrior and a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool topic, and like I said, shilling for Star Wars because that's part of my job too.
Yeah. Mark in the comments says, warriors attack and conquer. They prey on the weak. Soldiers defend and protect the innocent. I think that's mostly true, but I think you could say warriors also.
Yeah.
I might fight with that.
Yeah.
Well, no.
I think
why?
warriors can have an honor-based culture. I'd say it's more
Yes.
honor-based, and what targets are acceptable changes, right? Yes, some warriors might see killing weak people as dishonorable. Maybe they look for more of a challenge in fighting. Like there is no honor in killing women and children, for example, versus some soldiers rape, loot, and pillage like anyone else. So
Yeah, they're just following orders.
I think it's a nice romantic thought when it's phrased like that, but I think it's quite a complex topic that deserves like an hour and a half discussion on its own, which I won't do here.
It is complex. I agree there is that complexity. However, I don't know that I totally agree, because I think that a warrior culture mentality is that it's like it is your right to conquer other peoples, right? And where I don't think soldiers have that mentality. I think it's like the mission is to conquer other peoples, and they deserve to be conquered, and sort of like only the strongest survive. And if you can't fight us back, then you deserve what's getting to you. I think there is something to be said about that.
I don't disagree, but I'm just being maybe semantic about calling one a soldier versus a warrior, because soldiers can also be ordered to do things like
sure.
invade or act as aggressors or this, that, and the other, right? So
But
again, I think it's more nuanced.
Yeah, but a soldier could be led by like a warrior, right? And vice
Sure.
versa. Like someone who's more fits in the soldier class could lead a band of warriors.
And it could also come down to the mentality of the individual soldier, right? Like you could have a warrior mentality and identify fully with your occupation, or it could just be a job. I'm a soldier because my dad was, or because I have to be, or whatever else.
Yeah.
So again, like I might be getting a little semantic with it. It deserves like a whole discussion, I believe, and I would love to have that discussion, but I think it's a little more complicated than just like simple statements that again are cool in their simplicity, but I do think it's more. I think it's more than that. But anyways, I yield my time.
All right, let's get into the Great Hunt. At times, the Great Wolf or Rune Priests glimpse a vision of the lost Primarch and call a great hunt. Though none have found Russ, each has wrought great deeds. The second hunt reclaimed his sacred armor from the temple of Horus near the cursed Eye of Terror. The fourth shattered the Corellian conspiracy before it could seize the Administratum in blood. The ninth purged the Gene Stealer plague from Gehenna. Each hunt is more than a search. It is a trial, a test of Russ's sons, as if their Primarch still guides them from the shadows. You know, this whole Great Hunt concept is actually really interesting and cool, only because it's almost like become mythologized. And Leman Russ himself is sort of become a myth, because it's like, is he dead? Is he not dead? What actually happened to him? And it's almost like part of their religious ritual now to go on like it's sort of like a crusade, right? Like to go on
like a mini crusade.
Yeah.
They actually meet on Sundays, and then they talk about how Russ is coming back one day.
Yeah. The second coming of Russ. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting that like seeing them, incorporate these. I guess you could almost call them new traditions. Maybe were there great hunts before Russ was lost? Because it reads like they all happened after Russ was lost to sort of find him or find relics of him.
But yeah, how long did these hunts last? Like from the 30th or year 30,000 to 40,000, like 10,000 years. Like that's a long time to build like a whole new tradition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was gonna say is, like, first there wouldn't be Phoenician hunts specifically because they hadn't encountered Fenris before Russ.
Mm-hmm.
So that much of it at least has to be from when Russ existed. Whether or not I forget what their old legion name was, but whatever it was, that they may have had some kind of hunting tradition that eventually gets rolled into the Phoenician tradition. But that's the first thing I would say, is that anything Phoenician specific wouldn't start until they encounter Russ, just because obviously it didn't exist to them yet.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is exactly that, Jordan, is that 10,000 years is an incredible amount of time to develop a whole society. So yes, these ancient traditions genuinely are ancient, even if it's from just Russ's time. It would be, like you said, almost mythic. Like, 10,000 years later, waiting for your Primarch to come back, or whether or not he's alive, is kind of crazy.
Yeah, but it does list the second great hunt, so the second one ever, as having reclaimed his lost armor, which is why it seems like they didn't start until after he was already gone.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but someone can fact check us on that too.
Oh, sure, yeah. My knowledge comes from mostly this podcast and just days of scrolling on like 40K wiki and stuff. So and just rabbit holing.
That's awful. I'm sorry that.
It is.
Primary source.
At least like I found on most of like the 40K wiki stuff, kind of like on Wikipedia, they will at least like cite their primary sources, and I appreciate that.
When I cite my sources, I just say it came to me in a dream. So everything I know about Space Wolves, I had a dream about last night.
Space Wolves do have a lot of.
That's very Space Wolf. It's just a very Space Wolf thing. Speaking of their sort of magical traditions, they have rune priests, which are totally not psychers. Their rune priests trace their origins to the twilight of the Great Crusade. In the final centuries of the 30th millennium, they were the heart of the priests of Fenris, the orders that sustained the Sixth Legion in body, spirit, and purpose. Beneath the veils of superstition and barbarism, they were more than mere scholars or craftsmen. They were the keepers of the Legion's soul, its hidden history, and its most sacred secrets. Among them, the casters of runes stood above all. These warrior mystics, psychers in their own right, set themselves apart from the librarians of the other legions. They wielded their power with caution, seeing them both as a gift and a curse, seeking strength through guarded minds and psychic shields woven into their very being. Their armor, laced with psychomimetic fields, protected them from both the dangers of the warp and the temptation to draw too deeply from its power. The runic matrices and Fenrisian rites, or through runic matrices and Fenrisian rites, the casters of runes guided the Legion, foretelling the future and defending it from the chaos of the warp. In time, this ancient role evolved, shaping the present-day rune priests of the Space Wolves, a living link to the Legion's mythic past. So yeah, they have the rune priests, which they refuse to say are psychers, but sometimes you'll see them referenced as psycher-likes or having psychic abilities. It's again, inconsistencies within the Space Wolves.
I got a couple points. First, Jack in the comments says he did double check, and the Great Hunts did indeed not start till basically after the Horus Heresies. So we'll take your word for that, Jack. And my second point, did the Emperor clamp down on these rune priests at all when he found Leman Russ and started the Space Wolves? Is there any evidence that this was a big no-no, especially in his new empire?
I don't think so, because Russ fought against it. It's after the Council of Nicaea and stuff. They kind of defending them as they're not psychers, they're rune priests. They channel the spirit of Fenris as opposed to the warp. Yeah.
Of all people to see through that garbage, it probably would have been the Emperor, though. I just want to say.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The other thing I want to throw out there is Psychers, the Emperor did allow the Librarius to exist until the Council of Nicaea. So there were it was sanctioned Psychers. I shouldn't say sanctioned Psychers because that's a specific thing, but Psychers were sanctioned in the legions during the Horus Heresy early on, and then they were clamped down after the Council of Nicaea, which happened within the Great Crusade. So they went from no Psychers to no Psychers again. So it wasn't strictly the Emperor decreed right out of the gate situation.
Fair.
One thing I want to bring up again, because I'm not sure that we're going to talk about Skjelds again in this episode, but just going back to the whole oral tradition thing that we were discussing. Fun fact, we're engaged in an oral tradition now. We're bringing it back, boys. We are the Skjelds now. We are the tellers of stories. So,
but there's at least a record of it. So it's not just a game. It's not just a long game of telephone.
It can be.
I say these digital files could degrade. We're doing our best.
Exactly.
That's true.
So whenever anyone is listening to the podcast, it should have a fire, bring all the boys over, sit in a circle, and just put the podcast on and
smoke a pipe.
Listen us to regale to tales, have a feast, and
sharpen your sword.
The stories of long past, or the far future, I guess I should say. All right, let's get into Gene Seed. I love that steaming hot Gene Seed all over the place. The warriors of the Emperor's ancient legions were forged from the Emperor's will, genetically sculpted, mind-bound to war, their souls tempered in the crucible of battle. Each legion, however, bore its own essence, shaped by the blood they shared and the warrior culture they forged. Amongst them, the Space Wolves stood apart, feral, yet fiercely loyal to the Emperor's cause. To the other legions, they were distant, aloof, their savage nature veiled beneath a tapestry of myth and legend, hiding their true deeds in service to the master of mankind. Their gene seed, tainted by the Canis Helix, gifted them both power and peril. More beast than man, the wolves were hunters unmatched, killers of mythic renown. Yet in their primal fury, they struggled against the very instincts that made them such fearsome foes. To their enemies, they were more monster than man, creatures of rage and wrath, untamed and unstoppable. Yeah, so you have this genetic trait that's unique to the space wolves called the Canis Helix. And it's part of the reason why the early Legion was so brutal and ferocious. It was just like killer instinct, right? Like, I'm going to piss a lot of people off, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's like a pit bull instinct where they, or I guess I should say a wolf instinct, a predatory instinct that drives them to kill. And that can go too far. Obviously, like we said, they're like become more monster, bestial to others. They become something less than a man, right? They're not reasoning anymore. They're just hunting and killing, and that is what they do. And that leads to this tradition of brutality prior to Russ coming and helping them kind of sort of master the Canis Helix. But there's much more to it than that, as we'll get into here in a second. But
that could actually lean into the what we talked about earlier about them having the reputation for like going after the like already weakened foes, because that is what a wolf pack will do. Any like pack hunters, they'll go after like the smaller ones, the weaker ones, the elderly, the sick, the ones that they can take down the easiest with little risk.
Most smart predators will hunt, obviously pick off a weaker target, because it's not worth it getting it. Like in nature, getting injured could be a death sentence, right?
Oh yeah, it's a liability.
Yeah, exactly. Some animals just don't care. Some animals are just fearsome no matter what. The wolverine comes to mind. Or some are just so big that they also don't care, like a bear, for example. But even then, like they're pretty skittish because, again, like it's not worth finding out. It's not worth practicing FAFO in nature. You just don't take on unnecessary risks. Yeah, there's no hospitals in nature, as Mark says in the chat. So yeah, it's definitely not. You do want to target kind of the weaker target, and that wolf packs are no different.
Yep, and with that, we'll discuss some more in depth on their gene seed, the Canis Helix, known in whispered reverence as the spirit of the wolf, is a primal force that binds the sons of Leman Russ to their savage and honor-bound destiny. This altered gene seed, the blood of the wolf, shapes the Astartes of the space wolves, gifting them traits that mark them as something more than mere warriors. The veins of the 6th Legion flows a power that sharpens the senses to a razor's edge and quickens the mind to match. Their vision pierces the dark, their hearing tunes to the faintest whispers, and their reflexes become as swift as the strike of a wolf's fang. Yet, with this gift comes the appearance of the beast, extended, hardened canines, and a form that speaks of the wild. But the Canis Helix is not a gift without cost. It ignites fire within them, an uncontrollable aggression that burns like a storm. This frenzy, born of overstimulated senses, drives them to a bloodlust that is both a blessing and a curse in the heat of battle. At first, the effects of the Helix were subtle. As the earliest sons of Russ grew older, those who had survived the brutal trials of implantation began to show signs of the mental toll. The beast within began to stir. Over time, this instability twisted the warriors further, until some, in the darkest moments, lost themselves entirely, devolving into raging monsters, lost to reason and humanity. Yet salvation came with the reunion of the 6th Legion and their Primarch, Leman Russ. Under his guidance, the worst of the Helix's rage was tempered, and the Legion grew stronger. But the price of the curse remained. Though it was rare, some of Russ's sons still fell to the curse of the Wolfen. This affliction, once a whispered fear, became a shadow that loomed ever closer during the Battle of Prospero. In that moment, of psychic cataclysm, the curse spread like wildfire through the Legion, ravaging the 13th Great Company, leaving warriors in their hundreds to succumb to the monstrous grip. The wolf spirit is both a gift and a burden. one that defines the space wolves, whose fate is forever tied to the wildness within them. Okay, I don't know if I love this idea. It sounds like chaos to me. Like, it just sounds like they're being infested with chaos, and that chaos is sort of capitalizing on their already bestial nature. And but it's not calling it chaos, it's something completely different. And sometimes it bugs me a little bit when, like, it seems like concepts are too similar to one another in 40K. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I'm not sure I totally am loving the idea.
I have my own qualms with this. Not quite in the same line as yours, Jordan.
Okay.
Though I will say, chaos does often drive mutation. So
Yeah.
and because, like, there is an element of magic or sorcery around the creation of the Primarchs, and maybe a little bit in the Legions because of it, you could maybe make that argument that maybe it's kind of a similar thing as the Psyker situation of, like, they're not really Psykers, but they are Psykers. This could be, like, not really chaos mutation, but is chaos mutation. And I mean, there's also
it kind of sounds like Chinch, though. Like, to me, it just sounds like
well, no, Chinch is about birds, Jordan. Get with it.
Not dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it
Yeah.
is now? Okay.
Yeah. No, the question is all genetic mutation caused by chaos? Kind of like the same question we asked about Nurgle. Is all disease related to Nurgle, or is it sometimes just, genetic mutations happen, and this happens to be a rogue mutation that tends to afflict the wolves?
Yeah, like the way I had thought about it is, like when the other Primarchs were first being developed, and they were doing all of this different, non-chaos actual genetic stuff. Like they are a combination of like chaos, warp energy and genetics. But Leman Russ was probably built with some actual like wolf or canine DNA in them, and that would then be spread down into his legion. And then maybe the chaos, took hold of that actual, genetic influence and then twisted that, as opposed to like it all being chaos, but maybe like a mixture of the two. Like it accelerated that sort of growth or exacerbated that problem.
I'm gonna exacerbate the problem even further here in a sec.
I believe you fully.
So my qualms with this come around the idea that the whole coincidental nature. I've mentioned this before in other episodes, especially around Primarchs, about whether or not Primarchs were predetermined to land on certain planets, or how that ties with like their legions and their genetics and their culture / personalities. And this one kind of, to me, says yes, obviously, because what are the chances that the Wolf Primarch lands on a wolf planet, completely detached from his legion? Like, it would make sense if maybe the Canis Helix came from the Phoenician bloodline, so it doesn't appear in Space Wolves until after they conquer Fenris and start recruiting from Fenris. But it doesn't. It says it's always been there. So again, that speaks to it being in Leman Russ and in the Wolves from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me is like, well, now that's again way too coincidental. So obviously there's like a premeditated aspect now to it where, this Canis Helix business always existed. That's my first problem. I got another problem, but
is your other problem going to be for a later part of the section of the notes?
No. I'm going to say it right here. I just thought you were going to say something.
Well, one thing that, I guess it makes more sense with Russ and maybe some of the other ones. Just the idea of like the Primarchs going to the different planets, if there was something in their creation that then drew them to the planets naturally, like the warp energy mixing with the wolf DNA, plus like say Fenris does have a world spirit, maybe that spirit drew him through the warp once he was already in there to land on Fenris.
Yeah, like you have to, but that's now you just writing the lore. Like that's
yes, maybe I should be doing that, but
yeah. I don't know. It just never sat well with me in that regard. The other thing I'm gonna
it sort of comes across as plot armory.
I think that's just what it is. Yeah, it's convenient
Yeah.
writing for them to explain things, especially in the early days of 40K when this was all written.
Yeah. And again, you could solve it very easily by just saying that the Canis Helix wasn't introduced until after they encountered Fenris.
Yeah.
And that would fix all your problems. But they want it so badly to be part of Leman Russ's genetics that they kind of shoehorn it in. And it just, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing I was going to say is that, yes, Space Wolves always have this like whole enhanced senses business. Kind of some of my complaints around that. Obviously, they're drawing on like how wolves and like canids have like, you know, better hearing, better smell. I don't know that they have better sight, but you know, it's looped in with all the rest. And that's obviously attributed to Space Wolves like having dog-like senses. My problem with that is Space Marines are already so far beyond human. Like, what are we talking about? More enhanced?
Yeah.
Like, how could you be that much better than like, you know, go look at what a Space Marine can do, just a non-Space Wolf Space Marine. Like, how much more do they need to put them up just that much farther? Yeah. And then the other thing on top of that I was going to layer was like technology, right? Like, okay, cool that you can smell really great, but I'm pretty sure the Imperium has like olfactory technology that they could use. Like you see Space Wolves, like they'll take off their helmet to sniff the air and track their prey, but I'm pretty sure tech could like outstrip everyone on that.
You know, don't quote me on this, but I swear I read a few lines in Galaxy of Flames where they literally talk about using their helmet and their whole system to detect certain scents. So it's like you wouldn't even, as an Astartes, you wouldn't even need to have enhanced sense. Your suit can already do everything you need.
I like to think on the off chance that your tech doesn't work or whatever reason, or Marines are prone to remove their helmets, that you can still see really damn well.
Yeah, but if your helmet breaks, you can still do it. Sure.
Yeah. But my point still stands. Like that's just another whole layer of like, okay, like do we need this? Now, flip side to all that, I've been kind of pooping on all over Space Wolves here for a sec. Let me prop them up a little bit. Cool factor with the whole Canis Helix business is obviously the werewolf mythology now that we're incorporating, like where these warriors actually can turn into monsters. Very cool, very much in line with our conversation with Rick Priestley there about like he spoke more about the Blood Angels and the vampirism and like really drawing from real life monsters, right? Werewolves are traditionally monsters in our mythos, to reflect that as like these guys are monstrous entities.
That is cool.
That goes for all Space Marines, but more so in this case. And then obviously all the ties to, again, and I love it when Warhammer does this, when it all kind of comes together, is that duality with Space Wolves. And any story about werewolves is typically very heavy on the duality of like the inner savage nature of humanity versus the higher functioning thinking human, right? So obviously that contrast once again looped into the whole Space Wolf theme of contrasts. So yeah, that's my rant.
So now we'll get on to the physical appearance. So the power of the Canis Helix is a terror sung in legends, for it has claimed the lives of countless aspirants, their bodies writhing in agony as they are reshaped by its primal might. For those who survive, it twists them into slavering beasts, driven only by hunger and bloodlust. Yet the Helix is a necessary agony. Without it, the gene seed of Leman Russ cannot take hold. Upon its first implantation, the Helix unleashes torment as the aspirant is torn between man and monster. Bones crack and twist, hair thickens across the body, and the once human soul is consumed by a ravenous thirst for flesh and blood. The warrior grows, his body swelling in size, bones fusing and fangs sprouting, while the mind claws against the beast within. In these moments of brutal transformation, the warrior must battle the curse that lurks in his veins. Should he fail, he will fall to the curse of the wolfen, becoming a towering, feral creature, no longer of man or wolf, but something far worse. So yeah, like kind of what you're just talking about, you know, it is there, and there is, you know, this very real chance of you trying to become an Astartes, and you know, all of a sudden, bam, you fail, and now you're a werewolf.
as happens from time to time.
Exactly, as has been known to happen. So as Space Wolf ages, his body becomes a living testament to his heritage. Hair grows thick and coarse, turning a shade of gray that marks his passage through many wars. His canines lengthen into true wolf-like fangs, and his skin hardens like the pelt of the Fenrisian wolves. Those who survive the endless battles, who endure the fury of time, become gray hunters, veterans of the Legion whose very feature speaks of mastery over the beast within. And those who stand long enough to see the centuries turn white, their hair uh, like the snowstorms of Fenris, and their fangs like tusks, are the Long Fangs, elder warriors of the Space Wolves. Revered by their kin, these ancient champions have mastered the wolf's ferocity, tempering it with the iron will of a true warrior. They stand as living monuments, stone upon which the mightiest foes break their blades. So yeah, it will turn you into a werewolf, or I mean, it's very like typically what you see in like werewolf movies and werewolf shows and that kind of werewolf lore of having to struggle against and control that inner beast. Even thinking about like the Hulk, a very similar kind of idea of there's this raging monster inside you that you have to to learn how to master and control to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that speaks to the thing I was talking about, that duality that is a pretty heavy theme with the Space Wolves. I guess we should note that there is, and I'm about to get into it with the Curse of the Wolfen, but there is a distinct from going full wolf. You never go full wolf. Yeah, so like all Space Wolves have these like characteristics that are wolf-like we were saying with the coarse hair and the fangs and all that stuff, but they can go farther. It shouldn't, but it does sometimes.
Yeah, so almost like once if they can master the Canis Helix, they can sort of become like halfway in between.
Yes, exactly. But let's talk about what happens when it goes wrong. The Wolfen are the cursed sons of Russ, space wolves who have fallen prey to the terrible transformation known as the Curse of the Wolfen, becoming twisted, savage, and monstrous. Within every space wolf's blood runs the essence of the Canis Helix, a genetic gift that grants them the sharp senses and primal instincts of the Phoenician wolves that roam their homeworld of Fenris. During the rite known as the Blooding, the aspirants undergo their first trials. Their bodies beginning to agonize change and will elevate them to Astartes. But not all are strong enough to endure the awakening of the Canis Helix. Some, in the heat of that transformation, lose themselves to the beast within, their minds consumed, their bodies reshaped into the horrible form of the Wolfen. For many, the curse lies dormant for centuries, their spirits holding fast against the growing fury within. But once a warrior partakes of the cup of the Wolfen, he becomes bound to a relentless struggle against the savage wolf that stirs in his soul. Few can resist for long. When the heat of battle rises and the blood flows like a river, some warriors are lost to the wolf, surrendering to the hunger and ferocity that tear through their hearts. These are the Wolfen, fated to become something more than human, yet less than beast, forever bound to the rage that is the legacy of their Primarch. Yeah, so very similar to Blood Angels with the Red Thirst and kind of the Black Rage. But yeah, there is this inner struggle that kind of always there, always the potential to turn into a Wolfen. And when they do go full Wolfen, like they become even more bestial. Like they don't even look human anymore. Their hands become paws, like their whole body's covered in hair. Their face loses its human features and becomes much more wolf-like. GW does produce models of Wolfen. I encourage listeners to go look at them if they want to have like a more full understanding of what that actually looks like when they undergo the curse.
Cool. All right, shall we get into Fenris itself? The death world of the Segmentum Obscurus stands as the birthplace of the Vilca Fenrica, the Space Wolves, and the sacred home of their mighty Primarch, Leman Russ. It is the realm of fire and ice, a land that speaks of suffering and strength, a place where only the most indomitable warriors survive. Here lies the Fang, the fortress monastery of the Space Wolves, said by many to be the greatest bastion of the Imperium outside the holy walls of Terra itself. Fenris, named after the mythical wolf born of Loki, destined to break the gods in the cataclysmic clash of Ragnarok, a fitting tribute for a world where the sons of Russ hunt in the name of their father and the Emperor. This world, situated at the far southern reaches of the Segmentum Obscurus near the Eye of Terror, is a harsh and unforgiving frontier. The dark tides of chaos crash against its shores, but the space wolves have long stood as its steadfast guardians, ever vigilant against the encroaching shadows. Though their domain stretches across the stars, it is the icy heart of Fenris that they call home. This planet, a battleground between fire and ice, stands as one of the deadliest known to humanity, its waters forever churning beneath the sky of shifting violence. Fenris is a world of contradictions, where volcanic fury meets the chill of deep space. Its orbit, wild and elliptical, carries it far from its pale sun, the wolf's eye, plunging it into an eternal winter that can freeze the seas themselves. When the icy grip tightens, the once tumultuous seas freeze into still, dangerous glaciers, and the volcanic mountains lie dormant. But as Fenris nears its sun once more, the fire of its heart erupts in a storm of flame and fury. This is the time of fire and water, when great islands rise from the depths, spewing lava and boiling the seas. The earth quakes, reshaping the land, sweeping away the old, and leaving behind only the strong and the relentless. The people of Fenris have learned to endure. Born in the fires of the world's cataclysms, they are hardened by the extremes of their home. Nomadic and warlike, Fenrisian tribes roam the shifting lands, ever battling for territory in a constant cycle of war and migration. The seasons are a battleground of their own, as the islands are torn apart or swallowed by the ocean, only to rise again, reshaped and reborn. Those tribes, strong enough to endure these upheavals, lay claim to the new lands, for the promise of survival is fleeting and uncertain. Their lives are lived in the shadow of fire, ice, and ruin. The land is the greatest treasure of Fenris, and it is ever changing, ever warring. Only the strongest tribes endure through the trials of the great year, when Fenris nears its sun and the world is torn asunder by forces beyond comprehension. When the earth falls quiet once more, the survivors must seize new land and settle it, or be lost to the deep. This cycle of destruction and rebirth defines the very soul of Fenris. The Fenrisians speak their tongue, Yuvik, a dialect of Low Gothic born of ancient Terran tongues, a language as fierce and wild as the land they roam. In the world of ceaseless conflict and brutal beauty, the space wolves are forged by fire and ice and the wolf's blood that runs through their veins. So it's actually kind of interesting. They actually do literally tie the space wolves through Fenris. They literally tie it to Norse mythology. Like it's not just an observation. It's like in universe lore.
Yeah, I wonder if that was from like from Terran myths coming with the people who like settled Fenris.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like all the mythologies that do exist in our real world do also exist in 40K because they are the future of us.
That's
So,
right.
like,
Yeah.
any reference to Egypt or Norse myth or Greeks or whatever, what have you, would theoretically also exist in 40K.
One thing I was wondering from the section is like, how long is a Fenrisian year? Because if it's their orbit that causes all these geological changes from that like elliptical cycle, like this all happens, I guess probably twice a year. Like that it freezes, comes back through its elliptical orbit, close to the sun. Everything like boils, goes back away, freezes again, comes back on the other side of the elliptical orbit. Like that's rough.
Yeah. I do remember we mentioned in the first episode where we weren't sure what that time scale looked like. Like, was it a long winter? Was it like your whole lifetime it was in heat and then a whole lifetime in hot air and cold? But it seems that it's at least within a couple of Terran years. And I guess that's the other thing we should stipulate is what we mean by a year, because a year could be very different between planets.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems to happen within
A Fenrisian year. Right?
Yeah, is like a 2 Terran year cycle, or more or
Mhm.
less. So yes, interesting to note.
So we mentioned the Fang. The Fenrisians born to the ever-shifting chaos of their world have come to honor the destruction that defines their existence. They are warriors at their core, shaped by the relentless changes of their land, which crumbles and reforms with each great year. On the northern continent of Asaheim, the extremes of Fenris's savage climate are held at bay. This is the sanctuary, the heart of Fenris, where the great beasts roam the frozen wilderness. Massive ice bears, towering elk, and shaggy mastodons stalk the land. Yet stranger, darker creatures also prowl here. Snow trolls, shape-shifting doppelgangrels, and the great white worms that burrow beneath the glaciers and churn through the fjords like ancient leviathans. But the deadliest of all are the Fenrisian wolves. Semi-sentient and cunning, their sharp minds as dangerous as their fangs. The largest among them are beasts of legend, as mighty and fierce as any predator to ever prowl the wastes of Fenris. Asaheim, isolated and surrounded by cliffs that tower above the seas, is a place of both beauty and danger. Its rugged landmass, untouched by the world's cyclical upheavals, remains a sacred refuge for the Fenrisians. For them, this is the land of the gods, a hallowed place where the fury of Fenris is momentarily held at bay, but only for those strong enough to call it home. At the heart of Asaheim stands the Fang, the fortress monastery of the Space Wolves, a towering citadel that pierces the heavens. Known to the Imperium as the Fang, and to its brothers as the Aed, it is a monument to the strength and indomitable will of the Space Wolves. Built atop the highest peaks of Asaheim, a mountain called the Shoulder of the Allfather, or the World Spine, the Fang stretches out into the mountainside and reaches into the void above, drawing power from the very molten core of Fenris. The Fang is no mere fortress, it is a living, breathing symbol of the Space Wolves' might. Concealed within the jagged mountains are vast arrays of ground-based orbital defense lasers, hidden deep within the peaks like silent sentinels watching the stars. Atop these mountains lie docks where the battle barges and strike cruisers rest between campaigns, while below, hidden beneath the surface, lie geothermal and fusion reactors that power the great citadel. Shrines to the Emperor dot the lower slopes, marking the sacred ground of Fenris with symbols of devotion and honor. In the eyes of the Imperium, the Fang stands as one of the most impregnable fortresses in existence, second only to the Imperial Palace itself. Constructed by the Adeptus Mechanicus during the Great Crusade, it houses technology lost to time, a testament to the enduring legacy of the Space Wolves. Though it has never been conquered, the Fang has known battle. In the 32nd millennium, during the First Battle of the Fang, the Thousand Suns, cursed foes of the Space Wolves, managed to briefly breach its outer defenses, luring the majority of the wolves away before striking. Yet even then, the Fang stood strong, never yielding, a testament to the enduring will of the sons of Russ. The Fang remains unbroken, its walls still echoing with the howls of wolves, and its heart still burns with the pride of the Fenrisian warriors who call it home. So yeah, that's a hell of a place to live. Like right outside your door are trolls and doppelgangrels, which I'm imagining like almost like a shape-shifting Grendel from the sagas, and you know, like the rest of Fenris, it's rough.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Yeah. Fenris is a freaking Space Wolf puns. Fenris is a death world. Like, do not forget that everything about the environment is trying to kill you, like we mentioned before. It's cold Australia, or also known as Canada. Yeah. I don't know if I'm correct. I thought there was a more recent invasion of the Fang too, again by the Thousand Suns. I thought there was more than one, and I could be totally wrong, but I vaguely recall another invasion for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Most fortress monasteries though are like impregnable fortresses. Like they are the core of a chapter, and they are like some of the hardest targets in the Imperium.
Oh yeah, it's where they're going to have so many resources stationed there that it's going to be hard to hit.
Yeah. I can't think. I'm sure it's happened historically, but I can't think off the top of my head of any fortress monastery that wasn't broken by its own people, or at least taken back. And that includes even the homeworld of the Dark Angels that they blew up. But the fortress monastery exists now on a piece of it as of a rock. So
Yeah,
even then,
that.
they were able to hold a chunk, the most important part of the planet. So
Yeah, I know some of the spacefaring ones where their fortress monastery is like one of their giant battle barges. Some of those I think have been lost, but yeah, as far as like the world based ones, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, like I said, there's so many chapters out there, and history is so long. I'm sure it's happened. I just can't think of any immediately.
I'm just thinking of I think it's the Imperial Fists that had like a space-based fortress monastery, and I think theirs was destroyed.
The Phalanx.
Yeah,
yeah. I think it fell during the fall of Cadia. But I do also think they have a second base too. I don't think the Phalanx was their only one, but I'm just going again. Memory is a hell of a thing, and this is why oral traditions are not to be trusted.
Right. Don't trust this podcast. I mean, never mind. Ignore that.
All right. Well, let's get on to what happens at the Fang, like recruitment. The transformation of a Phoenician warrior into a space wolf is a harrowing and deadly journey, one that tests the very core of a man's being. Those chosen from the tribes are young, but they are far from typical. They must prove themselves worthy by enduring the most grueling trials crafted by the wolves themselves. The mysterious figures that wander Fenris, out wrestling and out drinking the mightiest warriors, are the wolf priests, choosers of the valiant. These priests select the most promising youths, whisking them away into the dark, never to be seen again by their tribesmen, for they are destined to join the Sky Warriors, the sons of Leman Russ. Yeah, so the tribes themselves have that mythic appreciation of the Space Wolves. They call them Sky Warriors. A lot of the Imperium has it, obviously, like the whole concept of the Angels of Death, and Space Marines being godlike or angelic to like the common masses of the Imperium. Like, of course, if they even exist on your planet, even then they're like still mythical and in high regard. Once chosen, the aspirants are trained in brutal camps like Rusavik and Grimnir, where they form wolf brother packs and are tested beyond their limits. These trials are not merely physical. Teamwork, cunning, and endurance are just as crucial as strength in battle. The aspirants must face not only the ravages of Phoenician nature, but the vicious beasts of Azaheim. Only those who demonstrate unwavering resolve and skill can advance, and they are inducted as Bloodclaws, the first true step into the brotherhood of the Space Wolves. Among the trials, none are more feared than the trial of Morkai. There, an aspirant's mind and soul are tested as fiercely as his body. The first trial takes place before the Rune Priests, at the gate of Morkai, a vast portal surrounded by fire and lava. Here, the aspirant must face visions conjured by the Rune Priests, testing his purity, resolve, and courage. Should he falter, he will be lost to the chapter, mind scrubbed and turned into a servitor. Those who pass continue their journey, but the most perilous test still awaits. The final trial, the test of Morkai, is the blooding that will either forge the aspirant into a true space wolf or claim him forever. The warrior must drink from the cup of Wolfen, an ancient relic imbued with the essence of Leman Russ. I wonder what's in that essence. This cocktail of gene seed, there we go, triggers the transformation of the aspirant's body and the soul. For some, the strain is too much and they are lost to the Wolfen curse, becoming mindless beasts. Those who survive the ordeal must journey back to the Fang, fighting their primal instincts every step of the way, lest they fall to the darkness within. If the aspirant triumphs over the Canis Helix and makes it back to the Fang, he is fully initiated into the Space Wolves. His transformation is complete, and he is now a Bloodclaw, the true Sky Warrior. With the power of his gene seed stabilized, he dons the armor of the fallen brother and takes his place among the great companies. But even then, the curse of the Wolfen lingers, and under great stress, some warriors may revert to their bestial nature. Yet these warriors, despite their darkness they carry, will fight for the Emperor across the stars, facing unimaginable horrors and living a life among the gods of their world. Yeah, obviously it goes without saying that Space Wolves are not Codex compliant. And they kind of do things a little differently than most other chapters in that typically, at least a Codex compliant chapter will have a Space Marine scout who is a Space Marine in training / going through the surgeries to fully ascend to Space Marine status, fight as a scout in scout armor, and they don't get to don the power armor until after they've ascended to full Astartes level. Whereas the Space Wolves actually group all their trainees together, put them in Bloodclaw packs, give them full power armor, and they kind of let nature take its course and thin the herd or thin the pack. And only after they survive through that process that they become fully ascended as part of the, I forget what the next, I think a hunter pack. The equivalent of like something like a tactical squad, right? Like a fully initiated brother, which is a little bit backwards how other Space Marine chapters do it. And then the Space Wolf Scouts are typically the older members of the chapter who've lived long lives and have honed their senses and are better, trackers and what have you. So they're very, very different from how they do things.
I think I talked about this on our first Russ episode, but for Warhammer TV, Hammer and Bolter, there's an episode where you get to see the Space Wolf initiates going through part of these tests where they have to go out and hunt these great beasts of Fenris and bring back like part of their body, like a claw or a fang or something, as a trophy to show to the rune priests. And you see the rune priest sitting back at the fang, sort of like playing, looks like kind of like chess or something, and sort of giving each other shit about whose initiates are actually going to come back.
Yeah, life is so cheap. Like,
oh yeah,
to them it's just a joke. And yeah, like as an aspirant, like this is a fight for your life. You're not only fighting nature, but like even the cold itself is deadly, right? Like that alone will kill people. Not even talking about all the monsters that dwell in it. And yeah, like I said, life is cheap to the Space Marines. That only the best deserve a chance, and everyone else can either die or turn into a servitor. Yeah. It's another interesting thing I wanted to mention too with Space Wolves. It gets kind of weird because there's a lot of old lore that comes into it. They're one of the few chapters that any, other than obviously Slaanesh based chapters, any kind of sex gets involved, and or like feasting and drinking and stuff like is typically adult behavior, but Space Wolves seem to engage in that behavior prior to becoming Space Marines. But if you remember, Space Marines are recruited as young boys. So like you're talking, up the 12 to 14-year-olds doing all these things. And then the other thing, like I said about sex, is like there's an old story of, what's his name? Ragnar Blackmane having almost like a harem or something to that effect.
I think I've heard of that before, because with the other discussions about can Space Marines even have sex or whatever,
Right, exactly. And typically the answer is like a lot of that stuff is either psycho indoctrinated out of them, like they just have no urges, and or like the chemical cocktails with which that they're constantly using just kind of, again, suppresses any kind of sexual desire, sex drive. However, with Space Wolves, again, going back to the whole cultural thing where like they exist almost as like a still part of the culture and history and everything else about their planet. I'll do a special episode on that topic, Mark.
Well, anyways, can you repeat for the listeners what
yes,
Mark said?
Mark asked to tell him more about the Astartes cock.
That'll be Astartes pillow talk with Chris.
Yeah, there you go. I'll tell you all about it. But in any case, Space Wolves seem to break the mold on that fact too. Now, again, that lore is pretty old. Whether or not it's still canon, it's like very exceptional. Even in its mention of the Space Wolves, you never really hear about it ever since that story, and I can't remember what the source material for that even is. But whether or not that's still canon at all, or Space Wolves, yes, they still have that like they have fun, they drink, they fight, but whether or not they have a sex drive is still up for debate.
Yeah,
But listen to it all on my special episode when I get around to it.
Right, but they still do have that excessive quality about them. Like we talk so much in the Slanesh episodes, to where you'd almost imagine that the Emperor would want that psycho indoctrinated out of all of the Space Marines, but they, you talk about them bringing in the aspirants at 10, 12 years old, whatever. It's almost like they psycho indoctrinate that into their aspirants, or at least like leave it alone if it's already there, like you said, just from the culture of Fenris, that it's part of who they are.
Yeah.
A liar in the comments says, "Is the penis gene the hidden gene seed?" Yes, I believe it is.
I don't think there's any lore to support that, Jordan.
No, it is canon now. It is canon. All right.
So they had to shrink it to fit it in the power armor.
Have you seen those cod pieces though? They're huge. What are you talking
Yeah, they're
about?
so thick with plating.
All right, enough of that nonsense. Let's get into combat doctrine. The Space Wolves combat doctrine during the Great Crusade in 30K was built upon a blend of ferocity, adaptability, and a deep connection to their homeworld, Fenris. Their tactics often relied on shock and awe, with the Space Wolves charging into battle with a combination of overwhelming force and brutal close-quarters combat. Unlike the more methodical approach of some other legions, the Space Wolves embraced the savagery and primal instincts of their warriors, using their fury as a weapon. This made them highly effective in situations that required decisiveness, particularly when engaging in lightning raids or devastating assaults. Excuse me. A key aspect of their approach was the emphasis on assault and close combat, with their elite units, like the Wolf Guard, leading the charge. These warriors often fought alongside their battle brothers as a unified pack, where teamwork, instinct, and loyalty were paramount. They made extensive use of specialized tactics, such as Thunderwolf cavalry units, that charged into enemy lines with terrifying speed and ferocity. The Space Wolves' ability to fight in varied terrains, often using their knowledge of Parisian wildernesses, allowed them to adapt swiftly to different environments on the battlefield. Their favored strategy often involved quick, brutal strikes that overwhelmed the enemy's defenses before they had a chance to mount a counteroffensive. In terms of leadership, the Space Wolves during the Great Crusade were led by their fierce Primarch, Leman Russ, who embodied their battle philosophy. His leadership style was direct and aggressive, valuing the strength of will and decisiveness in combat. The Space Wolves placed great importance on individual honor and personal bravery, with many of their warriors seeking to distinguish themselves through acts of valor by facing down overwhelming odds. While their approach to war was brutal, it was also highly effective, and the Space Wolves earned a reputation as one of the most feared and respected legions during the Great Crusade. So there you have it. Again, sort of some similarities to the White Scars. Quick and dirty combat tactics.
Yeah. Again, it also speaks to their deviation from Codex compliance. A lot of their units are all very unique in how the chapter is structured or how they fight, or the Legion as well.
Well,
again,
this is 30K stuff, though, so this is pre-Codex, isn't it?
Yeah, that is true. I retract my statement and reserve it for the post Codex episode.
So save it for what it'll be like Tuesday. But
Yes.
I feel like they probably, like what the things we're going to be going over here probably don't change much in for the next episode, because like you're saying, they don't give a shit.
Yeah, they don't do what they're told very often.
No, they're not good at that. They're not good dogs.
Very
bad dog.
Right. So into their martial traditions, the Pale Hunters Amongst the Legion Astartes, the Space Wolves earned a reputation as hunters of unmatched ferocity, rivaled only by the White Scars. Their methods were similar in purpose, the relentless pursuit of their prey and the crushing blow that followed. Yet where the White Scars prized swiftness and precision, the Space Wolves embraced the art of attrition, wearing down their enemies with unyielding savagery like the beasts of Fenris who hunted in the snow-drenched wilds. Their strikes were as certain as the fangs of a wolf, and mercy was a concept unknown to them. To the prey of the wolf, death would come as a long-awaited release after the agony of their cruel chase. The Bloodied Claws. The Space Wolves were no stranger to the blood-drenched charge, a tempest of fury crashing into the heart of the enemies. Yet where others might see only the clash of titans, the wolves saw something far deeper, a moment of primal reckoning. The battle hinged upon the single terrible instant when the enemy's lines broke, when the forces of war collided in an unstoppable surge and the heart of the foe was torn asunder. In that moment, the wolves were unstoppable, the fury of Fenris itself embodied in the strike. Once the line was shattered, the enemy's fate was sealed. Their death was inevitable, as certain as the fate of a beast brought down by the pack's claws. So yeah, they have two main tactics, kind of like the Tau. Both pretty great people, both great hunters. Modka the Pale Hunters, Guyuna the Pale Hunters, and Modka and the Bloody Claws.
I take umbrage with your comparison, sir.
Yeah, me too.
I had to do it. I had to fit Tau in here somehow. But it is interesting, that they, do have, kind of these main two tactics that do reflect real life pack hunting tactics, like we were talking about earlier, how they take down, like kind of like the weaker prey, and a lot of that is done by attrition, wearing down just the energy that like kind of persistence hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, again, like not very subtle with the wolf themes, but like these packs that they always seem to be in, think of them as squads or what have you. They're often with the same group of warriors, like for the most, if not their whole life and or Astartes' career. Yeah, again, a unique trait of theirs, but like when they forge those packs or brotherhoods, like they are genuinely even that much closer to being brothers when they spend their whole career or lifetime with the same people, until they get killed off. But it's kind of sad. This is the whole thing. We'll probably delve into it more with the 40K stuff. They end up being a lone wolf, and then what happens there? But I digress.
All right, let's get into hierarchy. So we'll start with the Great Wolf. The leader of the Space Wolves, acting as a steward until the return of their Primarch, Leman Russ. The current Great Wolf is Logan Grimnar, who has led the chapter for over 800 years. The Great Wolf's role is both spiritual and tactical, guiding the chapter in a war and maintaining the traditions of Fenris. The title is an honor bestowed only upon the most respected of the Wolf Lords, despite their significant power. The Great Wolf's authority remains temporary until the return of Leman Russ, whose leadership is the ultimate aim. Wolf Lord. This is the next one in the hierarchy. Officers commanding one of the 12 great companies in the chapter, often accompanied by Fenrisian wolves and Wolfguard. They are fierce leaders who lead their warriors into battle with unmatched courage. They are chosen from among the most respected and powerful of the Space Wolves, with some having led their companies for centuries. Despite the high attrition rate, many Wolf Lords become legends in their own right, such as Ragnar Blackmane. Each Wolf Lord's bonds with his pack is deeply personal, and their leadership is forged in the fire of the countless battles against the Emperor's foes.
So the Iron Priests, equivalent to Tech Marines, Iron Priests maintain the chapter's equipment and assist in the initiation of new recruits. They are usually attached to the Great Wolf's company, but may be reassigned to other forces based on tactical needs. Iron Priests are not just mechanics, but also skilled warriors able to forge new war gear and repair ancient relics of the chapter. Their role extends to ensuring the smooth functioning of the chapter's vast armory of technology. They also hold a revered position within the chapter, for their work is vital to maintaining the Space Wolves' war machines and weapons. The Wolf Priest. Combining the roles of chaplain and apothecary, they oversee the well-being of the warriors and select new aspirants from Fenris's tribes. Ulrich the Slayer is a famous wolf priest known for his wisdom and bravery. Wolf priests have served both as spiritual guides and healers, helping their brothers through both physical and mental trials. Their influence is critical in maintaining the ferocity and morale of the chapter's warriors. Wolf priests also perform rites and rituals that maintain the bond between the Space Wolves and their ancient traditions, ensuring that they stay true to their roots.
Rune priests. Space wolves, alternative to librarians. These psychers examine recruit, and yes, I will call them psychers, examine recruits for chaos corruption. They wield runic weapons and are powerful warriors, feared for their mastery over the forces of the warp. Rune priests are vital for detecting signs of corruption and ensuring the purity of the chapter. They maintain the chapter's strict opposition to the sorcery of other psychers. While serving as potent battle leaders, rune priests are seen as wise sages, and their insights are often sought before major campaigns or decisions are made by the chapter. It should be noted too, I guess, that like again, you have that historical mage or magi or whatever, what have you, where you might have a warrior, king, or chieftain consult with before making decisions, and yeah, like rune priests very much fall into that category. Consult the runes or consult whatever process of divination that you might use. Like lots of cultures historically did things like that. So, yeah. Battle leaders. Equivalent to the lieutenant, battle leaders mentor young warriors and may command multiple packs. Some may eventually rise to command entire strike forces. Battle leaders are chosen for their leadership abilities, battlefield experience, and martial prowess. Often their tactical genius allows them to lead Space Wolves into victory, despite overwhelming odds. The role requires immense adaptability, as battle leaders must be able to respond to changing battle conditions with cunning and decisiveness. So again, just like a junior command, equivalent to a lieutenant.
All right, let's get into the pack leaders. Non-commissioned officers who lead a pack of 10 battle brothers in combat, similar to sergeants in Codex Astartes chapters. They are the backbone of the chapter's military structure, ensuring their packs fight as a cohesive unit. Pack leaders are chosen based on their battlefield experience, and their decisions often turn the tide of battle. They also play a critical role in mentoring the newer recruits, teaching them the ways of Space Wolves. Their leadership on the battlefield is crucial, as the pack leader's strategic choices are often the difference between victory and defeat. Space Wolves packs. Instead of following the Codex Astartes, the Space Wolves form their battle brothers into packs, similar to Fenrisian wolves hunting together. Their heightened senses, especially smell and hearing, are crucial for identifying foes and allies. Yeah, so that's the pack leaders.
All right, we're getting some real-time discussion here for a second. And the notes.
Yeah, I would just
Okay.
cover the blood.
Yeah,
claws.
that's what I would say. Make sure I got everything. Okay, so blood claws. Newly inducted Astartes, hot-headed and aggressive, often acting as shock troops and preferring close combat. They may evolve into Grey Hunters after proving themselves. Swift Claws, a subset of Blood Claws, these warriors operate on bikes or land speeders for lightning assaults, often tasked with dangerous quests. Sky Claws, another Blood Claw subset, using jump packs for aerial assaults. Known for their rebellious nature and reckless courage, they strive to prove themselves in battle.
Grey Hunters, veteran warriors, the backbone of the Space Wolves, seasoned and resolute, comparable to Codex Astartes tactical marines. Long Fangs, veteran warriors with long experience, trusted with heavy weapons, and often leading under overwhelming odds. They represent the veteran backbone of the chapter.
Wolfguard, elite space wolves with extraordinary valor, leading smaller forces and sometimes becoming wolf lords. They also wear Terminator armor and can command the 12 great companies. Thunderwolf Cavalry, a secretive unit of Wolfguard, riding giant Fenrisian wolves, often enhanced with bionics for devastating charges.
Then we've got the Wolf Scouts, veteran warriors skilled in reconnaissance, skirmishing, and disrupting enemy movements, preferring solitude over pack life. Lone Wolves, survivors of brutal campaigns who seek vengeance for fallen comrades or die trying. Some join the Wolf Guard after proving themselves in battle.
We have the Wolf Blade, an elite honor guard for House Belisarius, providing martial aid and protection to the Navigator House, a pact dating back to the Great Crusade. The Space Wolves emphasize strength, valor, and a close-knit, often combative brotherhood, each member aiming to prove their worth in battle. Yeah, as I said, like a lot of these packs are formed as Blood Claws, and they kind of follow the same trajectory throughout their whole careers. So,
yeah. So I think that's all we got for the notes tonight, eh?
Yeah, I think so. That's a lot of sort of like subsection, like special units. A lot more than I would have originally expected from the Space Wolves. And it feels like a lot more than a lot of other chapters have. Maybe I'm mistaken, but because a lot of them do have specializations in like a lot of these specialized units, but this just feels like a lot more than normal, especially with like their like the newly inducted ones too.
yeah, the Blood Claws.
Yeah.
Are they blood claws? I think they're blood
Yeah,
claws.
the Blood Claws.
There's so many with wolf, blood, fang, or claw
Right,
right. that like you can very easily mix them up. But
like Wolf Scouts who go by themselves, but then after Wolf Scouts who go by themselves is the Lone Wolves who also go by themselves.
But there are also a lot of equivalents, like some that act and operate essentially as a tactical squad or essentially as a devastating squad. Even though maybe the progression through the ranks might be different from other chapters, but in any regard, do we have any call-ins tonight?
Yeah, we got at least one, so I can pull them up here. All right, Jax, welcome to the stage. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sweet. Wolves. I love them.
That is all.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
And Kangaroo. No.
Give us your best wolf howl.
I can't because my parents are trying to sleep and I don't want to.
Screw your
Maybe a
parents.
Likely story. There you go. So what's your favorite part of the episode tonight?
Just like the wolves. Like, I gotta say, like I did.
Come
No
on,
pun
have a better
intended,
answer.
Just the wolves. That's the whole thing.
Just the wolves.
Wolves all the way
Wait,
down.
before we get into that, you were mentioning in the comments Inquisitor Obi-Wan Classo. Who's that?
He's an Inquisitor from 40K. That's all I really know about him. He was a take on Sherlock Holmes and Obi-Wan.
Yes.
That is hilarious. Okay, continue. Sorry, go ahead, Christian.
No, I was just gonna mention that. Yeah, he was like from. I don't know if he's Rogue Trader or a little newer than Rogue Trader, maybe first or second edition. He's definitely one of those characters that rides the line of canon.
He used a power sword and was a psyker.
Yeah,
probably.
Totally different from a Jedi.
Anyway, Space Wolves.
So we've talked a lot about like the similarities between Space Wolves and like they're tied to their culture and White Scars and they're tied to their culture. Jax and I guess all of us. Who do you think is the better cavalry? The Space Wolves riding on their Thunder Wolves, or the White Scars on their bikes? What do you think is the cooler cavalry? Also,
I gotta give it to Deathcore Krieg and the Kroot on their Krutaks. I mean, it's one
The
thing to
Kroot-
ride
Just coming out of left field of that one.
love it.
it's one thing to ride a bike and be like, oh, I'm so cool with sunglasses and everything. It's another thing to ride a wolf in a battle. A bit more familiar than a little need be. Getting a little bit too friendly with that wolf. But it's another thing for on the third day, look to the east and see a million Deathcore Krieg riders.
Are you getting won over at all to the Space Wolf cause? Or are you still?
Oh yes, every episode you guys
Oh,
make,
you
I'm
are.
like, I want to buy that army.
So you would like to be chosen to go to the Fang and stare into the portal of Morkai?
Oh hell yeah!
If you could get recruited into any chapter, this is like a personality test for people that read in their magazines and stuff. Like, what chapter would
man.
you be? Would you pick the Space Wolves or would you pick someone else?
Raven Guard for sure.
Okay, well, fine then.
Are we gonna do? Should we go
I
all
mean,
around?
to be fair, Space Wolves will make you a man, but Raven Guard aren't going to kill you first chance they get. So
There's a very good chance you're dying in the recruitment process to be a Space Marine, regardless of the chapter. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
yes.
Was like
Take a baby and chuck in the snow and be like, is this still alive?
Yeah.
Right, it's like what, a 0.1% chance you survive the implantation process or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we've mentioned this tons of times on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very good chance no one on Earth today would even make it.
Oh yeah.
Regardless of even the best of us, right? Whatever Olympian or whatever athlete or pro in whatever field, there's a very good chance they don't even make the cut. Space Wolves. I just want to say they seem like they're always having a good time, which is enough for me to try. At least if I were forced to join a chapter. The cool thing about Space Wolves is, again, that like they're having a good time doing what they do. They have something more to live for than just duty to the Emperor. Of course, that is a very real and powerful driving force of how loyal the Space Wolves are. But also, they're having a really good time doing it. They're feasting, they're fighting, they're debatably doing other things as well.
They more than like any other chapter that at least I've known about and read about. Like they, especially Loyalist chapter, I'll also say, they enjoy life in general more than the others. It's kind of going back a little bit to that like soldier versus warrior debate. It's more than just a job for them. It's a lifestyle. It's their culture. It's what they grew up with. It's it's their lives. Like
Yeah.
The one perk I'd have to give the Space Wolves is that for starters, they could drink mead that would kill a regular person. Like it's nothing, just to get that buzz.
Yeah. Their Sardi's
They
physiology.
Biology.
Right. As someone who's made his own mead before, now I want to see if I can make some that
will kill you.
Space Wolves. That will kill me. Yeah.
Patent it, man. Patent it.
Call it the wolf.
Another
mead.
perk.
I think
another perk I'd give them.
Whiskey is typically distilled 2 to 3 times, and every time the alcohol content gets a lot higher. So just distill it like 6 or 7 times.
Right. There's
I love my whiskey.
You better not.
Yeah,
shut your mouth. There is like a bartending YouTube channel though that did a recipe for like Fenrisian ale, which involves like mixing mead with some other alcohols. I'll have to find it. I'll find it again and post it in the Discord.
Sweet.
Ooh.
My buddy made it for me one time. It actually was pretty good.
But it's not real Fenrisian ale because, like we said, it would literally kill you.
Oh yeah, goodness no, I would.
Yeah.
You're instant liver failure. You're just done.
Yeah.
It's like comparing a butterbeer from Harry Potter to like Fenrisian mead.
What is the alcohol content of butterbeer? Do you know?
I imagine not much.
Probably nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan.
Yeah.
I
That would be
dabble. I
funny, though.
dabble.
You kill the main villain by giving him mead from Fenris.
Yeah.
Well, Jax, any other thoughts on the Space Wolves? Would you like to be a Howley boy?
I gotta love my Space Wolves, but I gotta say one of the biggest main driving factors if I ever want to get into Space Wolves would be their named dreadnoughts and probably most of their named characters like Yorn. We were
Yeah.
talking about in the chat, but he was doing censored stuff in a dreadnought somehow. And Murder Fang, which on the tabletop, I played him last week. He tabled my army. And I want to
That's so
buy him just
funny.
because he could do that.
Out of respect for his great deeds on the battlefield.
Yeah. His whole lore is that they put him in ice, and then when they need him, they thaw him out and throw him out on the battlefield. And then after that battle's done, they thaw him in ice again. And these are only the biggest battles the Space Wolves get in. But for Murphy, it's like Tuesday. It's like, bring me
Just what he's
Gazgor. He
used to,
seems
yeah.
pretty tough.
Like thawing out Captain America.
Yeah.
Well, cool, Jax. Thanks for calling in. I always appreciate it.
Yeah.
See ya.
Night Lords.
You get out of here. All right, well, I guess the rest of you guys, any other final thoughts on Space Wolves, Fenris, their culture for 30K?
I do actually have a question. It's more just tabletop. You guys, in your own experience, anecdotal experience, like next to the Ultramarines, what is the most common chapter of Space Marines that you see? Would it be the Space Walls, or do you think there's another one that competes for that place?
I think for me, anecdotally, I would say I know more people who would play Blood Angels a lot too.
Oh, yeah, fair, yeah.
But I feel like
Yeah.
Space Wolves are definitely in there. I'd say
Pretty popular.
top 5, top 3
Yeah.
chapters to play, or even just armies to play in general.
It's a safe bet that if it's a Space Marine faction and it has its own codex, it's a fairly popular group.
Yeah.
That's how GW chooses to market. First Space Marine, second faction that sub faction within the Space Marine category that their sales are really high. I don't know. I haven't played the game probably since 5th edition, so it's been quite a while. But I do recall that Space Wolves where we're up there, like Fuzz was saying, at least top 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah, I think in the top 5, I was reading a post about the top selling just factions and armies in general. And I think out of 3 out of the top 5 were Space Marine factions. One of them was Tau, and one of them was, I think, one of the Chaos factions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm in that question, I'm excluding the Trader Legions, but yeah. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Well, cool. Yeah,
Jordan's hunting for an army to play, so I think it's a subtle way of asking if you would be cool.
I probably won't do the Space Wolves, but
they just had brand new models drop, Jordan. You don't want the new shiny.
I know.
Wait till the series on all of them is done, and then figure out which one you like the best.
Yeah, fair. That's not a bad idea. I'm still partial to white scars, but as Christian has told me, painting white isn't very fun. But
yeah, I mean, having painted a lot of yellow for my army recently, also not the easiest thing to paint around.
Yeah.
Fair.
White and yellow are the 2 worst colors if you can avoid it. There are techniques, there are fun, easier ways to do it, but they're definitely more on the challenging side for sure.
Yeah, I found my own workarounds.
Cool.
All right. So I think that does it for today. Last thing, one of the last things for me. If you want to support the show and you want to either buy some miniatures or maybe even sell your miniatures, you can go to Merlin Miniatures. They buy and sell Warhammer 40K. I think maybe even other tabletop games. They sell used, painted, on sprue, even some new in the box stuff, and you can use promo code Lorehammer to get a nice little discount.
Yeah, so if you're inspired to start collecting Space Wolves, hit up Merlin Miniatures. Start getting your army together.
Absolutely. And we also wanted to give a shout out to Lupercall for editing this episode. If you want to check out his stuff, follow the Lupercall TV on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And that's the Lupercall TV, all one word. And just search him on those platforms. And you'll find him. Go give him some love. He's helping us out. And if you want to join the editing team, the Noise Marines, reach out to either Mark or myself, and we'll get you hooked up, and it'll be fun.
And if you are also interested in myself and Jordan's other work, we do have a Star Wars podcast called Star Lores, where we do deep dives into the Star Wars universe. So if that's an interest of yours, or if it's not and you want to become interested in it, definitely come check us out.
I guess for myself, I'm working on getting back into some content creation. If you want to look on either Facebook or YouTube currently for Stout Hammer Forge, that's where I post pictures and some videos of the blacksmithing that I do.
Ooh.
I actually subscribed to your YouTube channel the other day. I am eagerly anticipating you posting some more blacksmithing.
Can we make can we make commissions?
I do take commissions. I only take a few. My rule is I'll take up to 5 at a time, and I will not take any more until all of those are done, so I don't overwhelm myself.
Fair.
But we
Okay.
can definitely talk about that later.
Okay, I will keep you in mind.
How much does it cost to build a demon engine from scratch?
Ooh,
Asking
I need
a
to go
friend.
see her friend. Let me go see what I can buy a like F550 chassis from first.
Okay, deal.
Well, all right.
right,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So the last thing, some shout outs for new Patreon patrons. I'd like to say thank you for Simon, William, White, and Spencer for joining the Imperial Tithe and just helping fund the show and make this content possible for everybody.
Your souls and bodies are gifts to the Emperor of mankind, and your sacrifice will be appreciated.
All right. Well, with that said, everyone have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
See ya.